This meeting is being recorded.
All right. Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Carl Wobilis, and I will be your host for today's session. Uh, Today's presenter is technical marketing engineer Eric Rennie. And before I head over the mic, I do have a few housekeeping items to cover about today's session. Today's session will be recorded, and we'll make sure to provide those details at the end. Uh, for any questions, we do encourage you to utilize the WebEx question and answer panel. And for those tuning into our live stream, we do encourage you to join the post-event discussion thread over on the Cisco Learning Network to ask your questions, because with this session, Q&A is limited live via WebEx. So without any further ado, I'd like to go ahead and welcome Eric. Eric, over to you.
Thank you, Carlo. Yes, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are. In this quick session today, we're going to cover what's new in Skinner Analytics version 7.5.1, which came out recently, about a month and so back now. I'm trying to remember, actually. And we're going to cover here, as you see, the key features that are kind of important to us. And what we'll do in this presentation is we'll take some of these key features and actually drill down to them in a bit more detail. This slide's obviously showing the very summary or high level of those. So what we're looking at here is the expanded data collection. So what we have in 7.5.1, one of the main key features is support for an additional 31 firewall log fields. So that's connection, intrusion, and malware events. And like I said, I've got a slide showing you exactly what those 31 fields are, so you can see what we're doing with that. Another thing to note is that all these fields are visible in the SAL event viewer, which is now part of the core application. If anybody's used the SAL on-premise app before, which is security analytics and logging with SNA, is that you have, or you used to have to download an application to look, the SAL application it was, to view the firewall intrusion events, malware events, and things like that. Now it's actually part of the core product, so you no longer need to go and grab that app and load that in separately. So that's another kind of key change that we've done on that side of the house. On the reporting side, we made some great leaps on the reporting side. We've given the ability now to create your own customized dashboard report, allowing you to basically configure anything, well, not anything, but configure what you have within Report Builder into one dashboard that you can customize to your needs and actually save that and run that. There's also a newer what we call dashboard report called Network Insights. And that report is basically already pre-populated with you, but or for you, I should say, modify that and remove or add information on, so you can customize that to what kind of network stat or network information you want to see. Another great thing about the reporting in this version is we now have the ability to schedule those. So when you configure the Network Insights dashboard or customize dashboards or things like that, we're able to look at those reports and schedule them. Also, what you'll see is a big change is the adoption of the magnetic, what we call common design standard. So what that really means is 7.5.1, you'll notice it will look a lot different from version 7.5.0 and previous versions as we try to align within the organization all our views. So the idea between the what we call the magnetic, which is a framework, is that all our solutions, irrespective of which part of the organization they come from, will look and feel the same from a navigation perspective. Excuse me. We've also did some user improvements here, that mainly around things what we call single sign-on or MFA support. We're supporting 3 new IDP providers. So identity providers, Okta, Microsoft, Entra, and login.gov. More will come in future versions, of course. And that's in addition to what we already supported before, which was the original Microsoft ADF service. Again, I mentioned that SAL application is now part of the core product. Another cool thing is that in response management, which we use obviously to respond to incidents, for example, send emails, alerts, and things like that, we also added the ability to send what we call alerts using the Identity Services Engine ANC policy. So what that means is in the previous version, for example, 7.5.0, if you wanted to generate for example, quarantine action on ICE or get ICE to do quarantine action based on a Converge Analytics alert, you weren't able to do that. In this version, we can do that now. In response management, we can configure the ICE NC, or I should say, action or response, say that if I see a specific alert from Converge Analytics, so the non-traditional alert system, then I can actually set that up and get that action to, or get ICE to enforce that policy. And don't forget, with response management, we can do that manually. So I can quarantine a host, for example, manually if I want to do it, or we can do it automatically. So we can use the automation rules if we want to do on that. Some of the other enhancements and changes, these are more of the back end stuff, really, to be honest. There's been quite a few of these, but I've just listed some of the ones which I think are important to highlight or more interesting. For example, MVM traffic is now licensed on flows per second. Now, what I mean by that, the network visibility module, as you're probably aware, is something that you can enable in a Cisco security client, or aka AnyConnect if you want to use the older name. And that module would export basically flow data, or NVM flow data, I like to call it. It's not really flow data, it's a lot more fields, but about 43, 48 fields that we send from the endpoint. So if you enable that module on the endpoint, it will send all those fields into a flow collector for us to process and to alert on. In the previous version, you had to have a separate license called the endpoint license to actually run that within Secure Analytics. Now in 751, we no longer have a separate license. It's actually part of your flows per second. And again, I've got some more slides to go in a bit more detail on that. We've also made some improvements on our OpenSSL support. We upgraded some of our backend databases there that we use, the Mongo database. We've also done some improvements on our SNMP version 3 support. And another cool feature, it's still in beta in this version, but it's still workable. It's what we call new direct software downloads feature. And I'll go into more detail as we come up, but that's the ability to, instead of you manually going out there looking for example, patch updates or things like that, from software.cisco.com, you can use the feature where it will look for that for yourself and advise you that there's updates to apply or patches to apply, and you can use that feature. So it's kind of cool. The idea behind that feature is to make it easier to use and less, should we say, cumbersome from an operational perspective, and hopefully to keep you more up to date with the latest patches and the latest software. So instead of you hunting for these, you'll be aware that there's an update to be downloaded and to be installed. There's also been a lot of enhancements around support. Now that's really for our kind of tech engineers and anyone that needs to go in the back end of the system. As you will be aware, in 750, we actually increased the security, for example, removing root users and things like that because of certain criteria that we had to do that. That's obviously introduced some other challenges if you're trying to support the back end and get in and do certain functions. So you see those listed as we come up. In 751 also, we've retired the M4, UCS M4 appliances. So you won't be able to upgrade those to 751 if you already have those existing. If it's a virtual appliance, then it's no problem, to be honest. You can still do that if you got a VM kind of approach, but if it's the hardware, then they're no longer supported for this version. Now I've got a little note at the bottom here. Coming anytime soon, we're now in full autumn period, is we're simplifying the integration with XDR. And what that means is that when you do that integration with XDR, configure it, it will then automatically send basically 3 alerts from SNA. And there'll be suspect data loss. It will be, I'm trying to remember now, suspect data loss, that's it, bot infected hosts, and suspect data handling. So those will actually go into XDR analytics automatically with that integration. And then they will be analyzed, and obviously, if there's corresponding, for example, EDR events for those, then an incident will be created within XDR based on those. Obviously, more alarms and alerts will be added to that automatic kind of forwarding. That will only be for the major and critical level of alerts. So, like I said, today you have to kind of go in there and do that yourself manually. Let me go to the next slide. So let's have a look a bit more of these new firewall fields I'm talking about. So what has changed in this version? Well, in the SAL, we're supporting basically FTD releases from version 7.0 up to 7.7. So on the SNA side of the house, we had to catch up because there's been a lot of updates from the firewall team from the initial version that we supported, which was 7.0. So we caught up with those additional fields, and now we're up to date up to, like I said, 7.7. We've added basically additional 31 fields. They're based on connection, intrusion, and malware events. At the moment, we're just displaying those and storing them within the data store, and you're able to see them on the SAL app. In a future version, we're looking at adding additional detections based on some of those fields that we're actually ingesting. We do today, as the 750, do some actions on fields from firewalls. But those additional 31s at the moment, we're only storing them. And like I said, future versions, we're going to actually do more detections on them, especially what they call the EV fields, as I'll show next. So what hasn't changed in this version is the way SAL is enabled, or license, I should say. So if you remember, SAL has a separate licensing. That's not like MVM. It's not based on FPS yet. We're looking at converting that to an FPS type licensing. So we have one licensing, whether it's NetFlow based data, whether it's MVM data or SAL data. But at the moment in this version, SAL is still charged in its traditional manner of events per second and database gigabits per day. No changes to support fields, but then you're probably not too concerned about that. Here is a list of those 31 fields. As you can see, there's quite a lot more information that we're getting from the firewalls now. But the most interesting ones, or the interesting ones I like at the moment here, are the EV fields, the encrypted visibility engine fields. So you see there's a process name, process confidence score, threat confidence, and threat confidence score. Those are going to be quite useful, especially for detecting malicious stuff and encrypted kind of communications that's trying to go through the firewalls. Like I said, the moment we store and display these, we're not actually doing any additional detection yet. That is to come. And that's what I look forward to in that future versions. Yeah, this one's a bit of an eye chart, and it's really what I'm trying to highlight here is because trying to match up the different SNA versions to the firewall versions. And where we're at the moment is in the middle of this slide, where we have that red box around that. So SNA 751 and later, we're supporting obviously FTD 7.7 and all those current fields. And you can see here on the right, I'm just trying to explain that with FTD sending SAL fields from 7.7, we support that. And obviously FMC has a different version level. What's next is obviously we're waiting for basically the firewall team to release 7.8. And obviously 7.5.1 already supports that, but we're waiting for them to play catch up. And we'll have more or additional fields that the firewall will be sending us in future versions. So that's all we're really trying to show you there. It's really a reference slide, this one, for you to make sure that you're the right SNA, FTD, and FMC levels to see those additional fields. Mention the dashboards. Now, the customized dashboards, there's two. There's the network insights that I mentioned, and then this one, which we actually just called a dashboard report. In a dashboard report, it's a way we can combine multiple, basically, pages into one big report. So if you've used Report Builder before, you know there's various reports that you can run independently of each other. What you can do with the customizable dashboard report is basically combine all those individual reports into one dashboard report that you can run and view and save. This is step one of what we want to do. What I love to see with that dashboard report, and hopefully that's coming down the road, is that we will be able to then use that in our landing page. At the moment, it still lives in the report builder section within SNA. So you can see on the right here, you can see the graphic. I've highlighted the dashboard. So if you clicked on that dashboard, you then be able to add additional insights to that. And that's what I'm trying to show you. It's very easy to do. What we can see from here is we're able to create a new report. You can select that dashboard template. You can basically open the report tab and add one or more reports to that. You have basically a drop down of all the available reports that you can include into this one master report if you want to see it that way. You can then click save and away you go. Just a little caveat, at the moment in this version, these dashboard reports, we cannot schedule them at the moment. We can schedule all the other reports that we do, but not the dashboard type reports. And like I said, what I'm hoping to see in the future version is that there won't be need to schedule it, as we'll make it more of a live dashboard and we put it on the landing page rather than the traditional one that we see at the moment. That's TBC, or to be arranged, or see if it's going to come. Building dashboards here, I've just gone through a bit more level down here, showing you how we create them. Very simple. Like I said, you just add multiple reports. It's a bit hard to see on a static slide here, but you're able to move. There's 3 epsilons or 3 little dots to the right of each of the panels. You can actually move those panels. You can delete them. You can rearrange how you want displayed, and then you can save that, obviously. And then you can go into that dashboard report and refresh it to get an update on those particular views. The Network Insights dashboard is slightly different. If you remember what I said this one is about, this is where it comes with already a pre-filled template, if you want to think about it that way. And by default, it's going to have the host group application traffic, the host group flow traffic report, network and server response, etc. All those listed on the left of this slide. It's already pre-populated in that. So when you click on the Network Insight dashboards, it's going to load those individual reports for you. And again, you can save that and you can modify it. Exactly same steps as the dashboard report. The Network Insights, very easy to create, very easy to modify. The concept here is that that Network Insights dashboard is already pre-populated, but gives you the option to add additional stuff, remove stuff, reorganize stuff. Again, these 2 reports, the dashboards and Network Insights, unfortunately, at this version, we're not able to schedule those at the moment. Only the traditional or standard reports we can do. Again, the Network Insights dashboard, you would see it like this, pre-populated with the panels. It's showing, for example, the host group application traffic chart and the flow traffic here. Again, there's got 3 ellipses. You can rearrange and move those panels around. You can delete them or add different panels as well if you want to do that, and save that as your customized dashboard that's focusing purely on your network traffic, what you're seeing coming in and out of that network. One point here on these type of dashboards, you can set them to automatically refresh, and refresh rate is 5 minutes. So if you want that, you can have that report displayed up and just have it refresh every 5 minutes to get a live, well, near to real time kind of view of the traffic. Mentioned scheduling and exporting. What we've added, like I said, in these particular reports, we can schedule and export as of this version. So the alarms reports, security events, DSCP, host group application traffic, etc. Basically, all the existing reports that we have in there, we can actually schedule and export them as a CVS. Now, the only ones we can do that, like I said, is the dashboard-based ones at the moment because of the way they're constructed. In the next version, in 752, we'll also get the ability to schedule and email those reports, not just as CSV, but also as a PDF. In this version, we're only got the CVS format that we can email on a regular basis for our executive team if you wanted to do that. Again, scheduling, simple 5 steps. There's not much to it to do that. You have to select the report you want, decide occurrence, is it daily, hourly, for example, select the time of day, who you want to send it to, and that's it. You click save, and then that email will be generated with that attached CVS for that particular report and sent to that recipient. One note I've got at the bottom here, remember you've got to configure your email server before you do that. If you get to enter, step number 4 here, where you try to enter the recipient's email, you will obviously get a warning message that you haven't configured your email server, so it doesn't know where to send that. So just a FYI on that. But that's always been a feature. Oh, sorry, I should say always been there. And then once you run those reports, as you see in the example here, you can actually see the schedule. So when you go into the report builder, look at all reports, you'll see some extra columns here where it shows you the recurrence. When is it going to run again? And here in this example, it's running daily at 12 a.m. You can actually click on the actions button there, and you can then edit the schedule. You can delete it or do other modifications as you see. Here's what it actually looks like. Um, Not particularly different from any standard email, to be honest, but just gives you an example of how it would be sent and what the message would actually say. So once you schedule it, you'll get this, you get a zip CVS file, which you then can open. You get the basic information, where it's come from, the manager, and when the message will be resent and things like that. It's magnetic. Now, like I said, magnetic is just the framework that they use in the web user interface. And we said, why are we going to magnetic? Why are we changing the way it looks? Well, the reason, as I say, is we're aligning to the look and feel. So all our products within our security business group have the same navigation, the same look and feel, even though if the contents or the data displayed is different, we want you to be able to navigate the same way. So we got this new magnetic, what they call app shell, and what you'll see is the sidebar, the menu navigation is now no longer across the top, but is along the side. And when you click on certain icons on the side, the menus then will pop up. So you got the side navigation, the colors, you get a footer and header, which will all be the same, irrespective of whether you're in Skinner Analytics or, for example, in our EDR product or things like that. The navigation should be the same for everybody. And here's just showing a bit more detail about that navigation. As you see, major difference here on the previous version, for example, 750, you do monitor, you have a drop down, and then you choose your sub-menu option there. Now, that menu navigation is now along the side. It's still there, so when you upgrade to 751, you have to get slightly used to navigating or finding your your favorite kind of navigation points in a different way. It doesn't take too long to get used to the new view. The only thing I found was which was a bit different, was when you look at domains. So if you have a data store domain in versions before 751, you'll see you get, for example, my example screenshot, I got Explorer Corp and it says data store. In 751 here, you've got Explorer Corp. You have to click on the little world icon, which is the domain, and that's where you can add different domains, and it will show you the data store and non-data store domains. So that one took me a little while to get used to. Not, again, difficult, but it's the domain switcher is slightly different. So some more of the improved user experiences. As we mentioned on the initial slide there, we've added basically 3 identity providers: Okta, Microsoft Entra ID, and login.gov. I said more will follow. That's in addition to what we already supported, which is Microsoft Active Directory services there. Not a lot to say here, really. I think the major thing on this slide is that if you're using this feature, is that we move this configuration from system config to the manager web user interface in this version. In 750, we had this basically in system config, but because of the ability to actually enable this, well, what I should say is some people was using this in 750 where they have this mode called SSO only mode. So if you have single sign on only mode and your identity provider is down, in theory, there's a chance that you could not access the web user interface. And then, so the ability to enable or disable that mode was put into the system config, where you can recover that and say, I don't want SSO only mode, I just want SSO, which would give you the ability to log in locally while that IDP was down. The chance of the IDP being down is quite rare, to be honest. IDPs are built with resiliency in, but there was always that risk there. So again, added that ability to disable the sysadmin users as well to block access to the backend. So a lot of those are backend security changes to restrict kind of access. As like I said, we're required to under certain government certifications and criteria. We had to do that. So we've changed how you do that. So just be aware of that. The Sal app, I mentioned this already. It's no longer a separate app which you have to download from software.cisco.com. It's actually included. If you go to the investigate menu option, you'll see it pop open and you see the security analytics logging on-prem. It's already included. So no need to download an additional app on that, which is kind of good. Like I said, no change to the way Sal is ingested or enabled, no change to functionality, all the same that you see. The only thing you'll see in the Sal event viewer is those additional 31 fields from the firewall if they're sending it to us. Also notice Sal is only available now for data store domains. We don't support what they call the Sal single or small box solution, which is basically sending the firewall logs to a SNA manager. That is no longer supported in this version. You need to deploy a manager, data store, and a flow collector as a minimum if you want to get this information. I mentioned the ICE ANC, Adaptive Network Control Policies. Again, ICE is controlling all the policies, not SNA. So all we're doing with SNA is in response management, configuring an action and saying that if we see this specific converged analytics alert, then go to ISNC and enact or enforce this particular policy that's configured there. I said in previous versions, we could not do that. Now we have the ability in 751 in response management. When you click on add new actions, you'll see the ISNC policy. Now, if you can see the slide, it might be a bit difficult on the right. You'll see it's listed twice. ISNC policy brackets alarms, ISNC policy brackets alerts. There is a difference. In this version, they've kept them separate. Hopefully in future, we won't have a distinction between the two. But the alarms are your traditional behavioral alarms that SNA has been generating for 20 plus years. So that's the ones that are based on your security events and the alarms, for example, like policy violation, data hoarding, you would see on the Security Insights dashboard. Anything that says brackets alert is based on that new converged analytics engine that sits on the manager and generates things like unusual remote access or inbound scanner, things like that. That's what we mean by alerts. So there is a distinction between the two there. So at least now in this version, we can actually work with ICE again based on those converged analytics alerts. Some other enhancements and changes. We mentioned about the network visibility module. That's the one that goes on Cisco Secure Client or AKA AnyConnect. And when you enable the MVM module, it sends us a great net flow with those 48 additional fields. Previously, you had to purchase an endpoint license, including your flows per second or flow rate license from us. Now, that is no longer needed. So the flow rate license now includes the MVM flows. So the process to enable ingestion, MVM, all that has not changed. So the mechanics of how that gets into the flow collector, how that is displayed or reported on, and what functionality we do with it has not changed. The only real major difference is you no longer need to add an additional endpoint license when you're configuring this or when you're building a bill of materials, for example, or paying for this solution, if that makes sense. So here we're just showing you what has changed, the MVM license. You will see a change in the back end in smart licensing. It won't have a separate category on that, but you'll see that flow rate, all of a sudden, you might see your flow rate actually increase because of that additional MVM flows coming in is now included with your more traditional net flow that you'd see. You will also see in the flow collection trend, as I'll show you in the next slide, you'll see the graph will now include net flow and MVM. Again, you'll possibly see a spike in that because of the way it's now recorded and it's not being recorded as a separate endpoint. In a report builder, also that will be affected. You'll see the changes in the trend report, the exporter report, and the flow collection stats report. So if you run those reports, looking at that, you'll see obviously it jumps or increases in that particular values. And this is just what I mean about what you see in smart. So this will be your license usage in a smart account. And all we're saying is before 751, you would only see your net flow records included here. So might be a bit hard to see here, but you can see that there's a flow rate. There's 45 flows per second of flow rate being showed there. Post 751, you notice that for this particular user, the flow rate has now jumped up to 18,000. That's because of those additional MVM flows are now being factored into the flow rate license. So I just wanted to highlight that if you do upgrade to 751 and you are currently using MVM flow or ingesting it, you will see that jump in the flows per second on the smart licensing account. I mentioned the direct software downloads. Excuse me. This has been integrated with Cisco's what they call automatic software distribution service. And at the moment, you will see that there's a warning saying it's still in beta. But the good thing about this is it allowed you to basically retrieve a list of any patches and updates that are available for that deployment. So you think about your Microsoft machines or even your Macs these days, you'll get a warning that there's updates or you need to apply updates and all that. So it's gone off, or what we're doing here is we're going off and doing that hardware. We're going there looking for those patches and updates and then telling you that they're ready to download. You can download the selected updates directly from that manager. So it's going to store them on the manager waiting to deploy. We don't automatically apply them. We want you to apply them, obviously, when it's convenient, because obviously applying updates and especially patches may involve a reboot. So this feature is to help, well, twofold, to make it easier to use. Instead of you going, I said, to software.cisco.com, finding Skinner Analytics, finding your software version, finding what patch or update you need, downloading them to your machine, and then uploading them to the manager and things like that. This is to speed that process up where it's gone in the back end and it's looked for any, it looks at your current version, looks for any patches or updates associated with that, will download them automatically to the manager, but will not apply them. It will ask you to apply those. So it saves you a lot of extra steps to make sure that you keep up to date. So to be honest, it's in our best interest on the SNA side of the house that we want you to be up to date and keep up to date with all the changes rather than fall behind. And if you have a large deployment of VMs or even hardware, this saves a lot of time, a lot of effort for you guys. Yeah, just showing some of the screenshots here. This is actually what it looks like. It will actually show you the available updates. Here I'm showing you can download all, and then we know whether you want to apply those or not. So again, we leave you in control of when and what you want to download and update. I mentioned there was some back-end support enhancements, which I'll make you aware of. So generally, unless you're working with TAC, these are probably not so important, but we've added the ability to help our tech support engineers support you guys, providing a direct upload of the dialog or diagnostic pack, as we call it. That's a pack that support will ask you to run from time to time if you're seeing issues, which gathers all the important logs into one file. So the ability to upload that directly means you as a user don't have to worry about generating that diagnostic pack, then uploading it to a Cisco tech case and things like that. You'll have the ability just to generate that and upload it directly to the tech team, and it will go into your account and your support case automatically for you. They've added some additional fields that the tech team wanted in that pack to help them to do more troubleshooting. And we mentioned the enable disable SSH. That's another thing we introduced in 750 was obviously by default, SSH is disabled for security reasons. And also the root access or the root user is disabled for security reasons as well in 750. What tech is asked to have the ability to enable the SSH in the web user interface and for the back end. So what they were finding was that To be honest, in certain situations, you need an SSH session to access the root access because you need to type in a key, and the key is a very long key. So having SSH access helps to basically cut and paste those keys in. Added the ability also to delete the software update files, which is quite good. So we mentioned the direct downloads. So when it downloads those patches and updates and you deploy them, the actual update files will stay in the manager and take out valuable disk space from time to time. So they've given you the ability to basically, in Update Manager, to delete those files and free up the disk. But also sometimes I've seen situations where the manager still thinks it needs to update a file when it's already been updated because this SWU file, as we call it, is still there. So the ability to remove that file actually helps the manager to realize that that update has actually gone through. So sometimes you see a situation like that. Very rare, but sometimes. And then with the M4 appliances, the USDS, the physical hardware, we've changed our support, like I said, and there's a nice little chart there, subversion support matrix. So 751, you see in the table bottom there, we support the M5s and M6 hardware appliances. No longer do we support the M4s. And in 751, if you try to upgrade your physical appliance and it's an M4, UCS M4, then it won't happen. To be honest, it will check and actually deny that. So, like I said, any clean or fresh install 751 or later will not function on M4 generation appliances. So be aware of that. The M5, M6s, no problem. And virtual editions are not impacted. So if you're like me running a lab and you have a bunch of virtual machines, you can upgrade them to 751 with no issue. That's not a problem here. There is one thing I do want to point out with 751. Actually, it came in 750. If you haven't upgraded to 750, if you are deploying in a VM or virtual environment, it will do basically a CPU emulation check. It needs your basically VMware hardware or version, I should say, should support AVX or AVX2 CPU emulation. That's not a problem with most of you if you're up to date on your VMware updates. But I've seen situations where customers are running older versions of VMware, and when the manager upgrades, it checks that version. And if that version does not support that new CPU emulation on the VM, it will stop the install. So that was brought in from 750, that check. So 750 and 751 will check. Now, the caution here is that if you upgrade your flow collector, your flow sensors, all your appliances, and then you do the manager, that's where you can get stuck. It's only when the manager does his upgrade does it do the check. So you can waste some time upgrading your VMs and only find out on the last step that your manager won't complete the upgrade because of that emulation. So just a little caveat to look out for. So on the actual physical hardware appliances, these M4 generation appliances are no longer supported with 751. So you can still use 750 on them, not a problem. So that's the physical manager, the 2200 model, the UDP Director 2200 model, and the various flow collectors and flow sensors listed there. All the newer managers and flow collectors and flow sensors are supported. As you're hopefully aware, UDP Director is no longer, as a physical appliance, supported after the 2200 anyway. That's where you should be looking at using the Cisco telemetry broker instead of the UDP Director. There's been a few features removed. I'm not going to go through the whole list here. One I did mention was, for example, the SAL small box. That's the one where you have the one box or a manager only. Just be aware that it's no longer available. So if you are using that rather than using the data store architecture I mentioned, then reach out for help and support to actually upgrade yourself to have a manager, data store, and a flow collector. Also, anything relating to SecureX, for example, the integration ribbons, that has been removed in 751. 750 still has references to those. 751, they're no longer there. There's also something called a packet analyzer, which, to be honest, no one really kind of used for a long, long time. They've removed that functionality as well, which helps with the code. The ribbon, you would normally see the XDR stroke Secure X ribbon, I guess it was then, floating around. So 750, you will see the Secure X ribbon floating around at the bottom of the manager window. That is no longer in 751, but if you still want to use the new XDR ribbon, then you can download it as a browser plugin on your dashboard. So that makes sense. Just recapping, here, this is not new features, but just to recap, the Skinner Analytics is part of our Cisco Breach Protection Suite. Now, what that suite entails is obviously you have a base level, the essentials, and the advantage. So Skinner Analytics comes in at the advantage layer here within our suites. So if you're looking at purchasing from our suites and want to take advantage of Cisco XDR, Secure Endpoint, and the telemetry broker, then Advantage is definitely the level you want to aim for. With Secure Analytics at the Advantage level, you'll get that advanced telemetry ingestion, the threat hunting, the network segmentation use cases, the traffic monitoring features that you're all used to. If on the Breach Suite, if you go for Essentials, you'll get basically XDR Analytics, which is based on the old Secure Cloud Analytics backend. So you get NDR performance, but you're not going to get what I call the premium NDR performance or network detection response, which you get with Advantage, and obviously all the additional features you get there. Just recapping, we're still in 751. We're still responding and working with Cisco XDR. We're extending that response capability. We have the ability to populate tiles in the XDR dashboard, alarms, events. XDR is able to use APIs and pull enrichment data from us and things like that. The only thing that's slightly changed here is what we can send into XDR itself. Like I said, coming shortly is the ability to send those 3 alarms to begin with up into XDR. That's a suspect data loss, the bot infected host, suspect data hoarding. Those will be, when you do the XDR integration, will automatically go into the back end of the XDR analytics and will then be correlated with other events, for example, from the EDR, from the endpoint detection response systems, and generate incidents. So that's the slight difference that we're seeing in this particular version on this slide. Collateral, obviously we're going to share this with you guys. Just want to recap. We have a data store design guide. So if you have not deployed the data store yet, please go ahead and do that. That's where we're looking at. We're not looking at, that's where all the new features will be developed with the Secure Analytics. We're no longer really looking at what we call the traditional deployment, which is just the manager and the flow collector. So definitely start to reach out to us on that. If you haven't transitioned across, it's very easy to transition across into data store architecture. If you're on the internal side, this is obviously for basically internal partners. So if you're a customer, you won't have access to what we call Sales Connect. But if you're internal, we have a what we call a landing page, a hub page, where you can get more information internally from the group. On the public side, where you guys come from, we still have Secure Analytics videos out there you can access. So showing demo series and things like that. We still have a YouTube channel that's out there. You can have a look on that as well. There's links on here. And if you're basically, if you have a Cisco ID or CCO ID, you can access our training center. So the Secure Analytics Training Center has use cases. It walks you through what SNA is. It walks you through what a CDB is. It walks you through XDR. It walks you through what is NetFlow, for example. Very, very useful resources. A lot of it's self-training, but there is actually instructor-led training as well available for you there. And like I said, it's free as long as you have a Cisco CCO ID effectively. Here we have some links as well. We have what we call a click-through or walk-through demo. So if you click on that link there, it will guide you through a recorded demo, not a video, but a recorded demo where you can click through at your own pace and shows you the new 750 interfaces and things like that. That's going to be updated to 751 shortly. But at the moment, we've got the 7501 you can click through. Also in dCloud, if you're used to or know about dCloud, we do have what we call instant demo, which we populate with data. Again, we're updating that to 751 as we speak. Also, we have a test drive lab in dcloud. Now, the dcloud labs obviously are available to Cisco employees and partners, but as customers, we need to schedule and arrange training sessions with you to give you access to them. But the click-through demo is available to anybody. So as an easy step, you can actually go there and get a feel of what's coming before you upgrade or before you think about moving to the next version. Okay, that's all I wanted to cover. Very brief, very quickly. Hopefully that was informative. And like I said, 752, the next version, which we're hoping to see after Christmas time, LA, limited availability. It's going to have a lot more cooler things in there, which I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Eric. So now comes our Q&A portion of the session. So if you do have a question, please use the Q&A panel to go ahead and submit your questions. And it looks like we do have one question that came in. So let's see here. The question is, as a network engineer, if the network is compromised, what first step should I take? One of the answers that were provided, and maybe Eric, you can provide any follow-up after this one, is if you have a SOC playbook, consult this first, collect and preserve evidence, and you also want to isolate the compromised areas / host if possible.
Correct. Yeah, all the above, yes. That's where, for example, you can use SLA to detect that breach, detect that potential attack. And for example, use response management. And that response management, if you're using Identity Services Engine, that's where you can send a quarantine action to ISO quarantine that host, or we can send the messages into XDR and get XDR to take an action and use the automation part of XDR to carry out a playbook action on that. So there's several ways to do it. For example, like I said, depending on what kind of integrations that you have. And what we're developing, as you'll see coming up very shortly, is the ability to actually send information. Well, it's not new. We've always sent information to Splunk, for example, SIM. As you know, Splunk is now part of Cisco. We've got the ability to send those alarms and alerts via syslog, webhook, or even a new app that we're developing, and hopefully we'll have that by the end of the week, where we can actually integrate more closely with Splunk and get Splunk to generate what we call notables in enterprise security, which is similar to like incidents in XDR. So there's other avenues coming in there. But first of all, is SNA provides that network-wide visibility, as I say. It gives you that ability to know that there's a threat and the ability to respond to it. SNA itself is not the responder. It's not going to do the mitigation, but it's going to highlight there's something wrong and give you the ability to respond to that, either using, for example, like I said, ICE, XDR, or even Splunk down the road, if that makes sense. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And then one of the questions asked is if the demo links will be provided. Yes, we'll post them on the post-event discussion thread. I went ahead and added those to the chat, so definitely bookmark those. And then as far as the post-event discussion thread, that is also in the chat. Let me go ahead and post it one more time.
And just one word on those ones that require dcloud, you will need to be, like I said, a Cisco employee or partner to access those. If you're a customer and you want to get access to them, then reach out to your Cisco representative and they can schedule those for you and get you access to those dcloud ones. But the click-through demo, anyone should have access to that one.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And then, yes, we will include a copy of the slide deck as a downloadable PDF with the recording over on the Cisco Learning Network. Definitely bookmark that post-event discussion thread. To view the recording from today's session, you can also view that via the Cisco Learning Network post-event discussion thread. All right, Eric, it looks like we've covered all the questions for today's session. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
No, just thank you for listening and stay tuned. We've got more interesting stuff coming in 752, which I'm looking forward to.
Thank you very much, Eric. And thank you to our panelists and the whole team for bringing your knowledge to the Cisco community. Again, if you have a question, I'll keep the Q&A window open for a couple more minutes, but do visit the post-event discussion thread over on the Cisco Learning Network. For even more tutorials, demonstrations, and future sessions, please visit the Cisco Learning Network. That link is in the chat. Okay, your feedback is important, and at this time, you'll be directed to a survey. So we do encourage you to take the time to participate. Once again, we thank everyone for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.